This episode is different. The doctor in this one survived. The person who died was a medical assistant, 37 years old, 2 children, mother of a boy and a girl. Her name was Lindsay Overbay, and the man who killed her had been telling people he was going to do it for almost 3 years. Lindsay Marie Overbay was born and raised in New Ulm, Minnesota. She studied at St. Cloud State. She moved to Buffalo for the work and the quiet and the schools. She was a medical assistant. The person who took your blood pressure before the doctor came in. The person who explained your discharge instructions. The person who remembered your kids' names. She had worked at Allina Health since November of 2018. Her best friend would tell CNN, after she was dead, that Lindsay lived and breathed for her children. Her husband Donnie would later plant a field of sunflowers in her name. I want you to remember a medical assistant the next time you walk into a clinic. The doctor is the face on the website. The medical assistant is the person you actually talk to. Who actually touches you? Who has to look you in the eye and tell you what time your next appointment is, when she already knows you're going to scream at the receptionist because your insurance doesn't cover the thing you came for? Lindsay Overbay was that person. For a man who, on the morning of February 9th, 2021, was no longer thinking of her as a person. Gregory Paul Ulrich was 67 years old in February of 2021, a resident of Buffalo. According to his own testimony at trial, his pain had begun in 2016 after a surgery to address scoliosis, a curvature of the spine. He had been given 2 months of pain medication after that surgery and then cut off. He would later say on the witness stand that he had asked more than 50 medical professionals for help. He had written letters to law enforcement. He had written to Senator Amy Klobuchar. He had written to the President of the United States. None of them had given him what he wanted. None of them had given him what he believed he needed. In October of 2018, more than 2 years before the shooting, Gregory Ulrich called his former doctor 3 separate times. He told the doctor he was going to commit a mass shooting. He told him he was going to blow things up. He used the word torture. "They have tortured me," he said, with their back surgeries and their refusals to medicate him. The doctor, to his credit, told police he believed Ulrich was a high threat to society and himself. Police picked Ulrich up. They took him to the emergency room. They had him evaluated. And then he went home. And the system stopped watching him. In the months before the attack, Gregory Ulrich made 2 cell phone videos of himself. The prosecution would play them at trial. In them, looking into his own camera, he urged other older Americans to grab their pistols and go down to their clinics and kill as many nurses as possible if they were cut off from their pain medication. Nurses. He said the word nurses. Lindsay Overbay was not a nurse. She was a medical assistant. But this is what I want you to hear. The man who killed her, in the videos he was making in the privacy of his own bedroom 3 months before he walked into her clinic with a handgun and a suitcase of pipe bombs, had already told the camera who he was going to kill. He had announced it, to himself, to a future jury. Nobody in the system, between October of 2018 and February of 2021, was watching that bedroom. Gregory Ulrich walked into the Allina Crossroads Clinic in Buffalo, Minnesota, on the morning of February 9th, 2021, carrying a handgun and 3 improvised explosive devices. Surveillance video would later show him setting the briefcase down in the lobby. He pulled the gun from his waistband. He fired at 2 people first, Tamara Schaffler and Antonia Franson Pruden. He shot at the lobby windows, shattering them. He moved further into the clinic. He shot 2 more people, and then he shot a 5th person, in the abdomen, Lindsay Marie Overbay, 37 years old, mother of 2. Tell me anything you can about the party that's shooting. I am. A bomb or 2 is going to go off. Send a lot of ambulances. There are a lot of spinal injuries. Lindsay Overbay died of her injuries at Hennepin County Medical Center later that day. 4 other Allina employees survived: Sherry Curtis, Antonia Franson Pruden, Jennifer Gibson, and Tamara Schaffler. All of them carried bullets out of that clinic. One of them was hit 6 times. Gregory Ulrich went to trial in 2022. He admitted, on the witness stand, that he had bought the gun. He had built the pipe bombs. He had carried out the attack. He insisted, however, that he had never intended to kill anyone, that he had only intended, in his words, to cause property damage and to make the clinic feel some of the pain he had felt. The jury, having watched the cell phone videos he had made of himself, did not believe him. On June 2, 2022, the Wright County jury convicted Gregory Ulrich on all 11 counts, including first-degree premeditated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I am not ashamed of anything. The attack could have been avoided if doctors and nurses had listened to me and helped me properly manage my pain. The pain made me lose my mind. I want you to hold both of those things in your head at once, because the man who said this was a murderer who deserved his sentence. And the system he was indicting, the one that had cut him off from medication after surgery, watched him deteriorate for years, listened to him threaten a mass shooting in 2018, evaluated him and released him. That system was also real. Both of those things are true. The fact that one is true does not make the other less true. That is the hardest thing about this whole series. The people who did the killing were monsters at the moment they pulled the trigger. They were also, before that moment, patients the system had failed. In Buffalo, 2 policy failures collide in the same hallway. The first is the one we have been tracking through this whole series. Opioid statutes that count pills but do not count patients. A pendulum that swung correctly away from overprescription but did not swing toward any funded alternative. But the second failure in Buffalo is different. It is the absence of any functional pathway between a doctor who recognizes a homicidal threat and a system that can actually intervene before the threat becomes a body. Ulrich threatened a mass shooting in October of 2018. He was evaluated. He was released. He went home. And nothing, no civil commitment, no firearms restriction, no continuing case management, no behavioral health follow-up, bridged the 2.5 years between that threat and the morning he walked into Lindsay Overbay's clinic with a handgun and 3 pipe bombs. That is what an escalation pathway means. Not just for the patient in uncontrolled pain, for everyone around that patient, for the medical assistant whose job it was to take his blood pressure 6 months before he came back with a gun. In the months after his wife was killed, Donnie Overbay decided he had to do something. So he planted sunflowers, a whole field of them, on the edge of Buffalo. He opened the field to the public in the summer of 2021. He has kept it open every year since. His wife was the medical assistant who took your blood pressure before the doctor came in. The person who remembered your kids' names. The person who lived and breathed, her best friend said, for her own 2 children. She did not die for an opioid prescription. She died for the gap between one. And for that, her husband planted a field so that her children would have something they could walk through in the summer that was not a graveyard. 2 questions to add to the list. In your state, when a doctor flags a patient as a credible homicidal threat, what happens next? Not in theory, in real life. Is there a case management pathway, a follow-up requirement, a firearm restriction protocol triggered by the evaluation? Or does the patient walk out of the emergency room with a piece of paper and a number nobody calls? And second, in your state, are clinics required, by accreditation, by reimbursement, by any binding rule, to maintain active threat assessment programs? Or is workplace violence in medicine still treated as an act of God instead of an act of policy? Her name was Lindsay Marie Overbay. She was a medical assistant. She had 2 children. The man who killed her told the camera in his bedroom what he was going to do 3 months before he did it. Nobody was watching the bedroom.